Welcome to the Fruit Snacks Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Wardrop from Drop the Word Life Coaching. I am the T1D Moms Coach. I'm here to help you manage your mental and emotional health while managing your child's diabetes. 2 of my 5 kiddos have been diagnosed, and so I'm very familiar with your struggles, and I don't know where I'd be without these life coaching tools and the gospel of Jesus Christ to get me through the day and night. Thank you for joining me as we journey towards feeling less scared, sad, and stressed, and start feeling more calm, confident, and connected. Let's get started. Okay, welcome back to the Believe You Are a Good Mom podcast. I have a very special guest today. This is Dr. OC. She goes by. So her name is Dr. Sheila Owens-Collins. So OC, Owens-Collins, right? And she's a new friend of mine, and I'm excited to share her story with you. So Dr. OC, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Sheila Owens-Collins, as you just said. My nickname is Dr. OC, and I am a parent of a young adult now, or as they're calling them, emerging adults with type 1 diabetes. I think it's interesting at how we met. We met because I am writing a book on parenting a child with type 1 diabetes. It's something that you live every day since the diagnosis. And part of my own therapy and part of my therapy is helping other families to navigate it, because it's so overwhelming. It can be so overwhelming. But I have been so encouraged by the community of other families with type 1 diabetes, and especially JDRF, and all of the endocrinologists that I have met along the way. And I've met many because I'm a pediatrician, so I sort of have fast track access to them. The community that I've met, the professional as well as the family communities, have been inspiring to me. And so I've decided to pen a book to talk about that, as well as my son, who is also very inspiring to me. In spite of his health issues of the condition of diabetes, he has done extremely well. And I can't, even though I was a single mom, I can't say it was all me. I think that this whole journey has made us all very spiritually founded, developed a very strong spiritual foundation, and I had a lot of family support and a lot of support from friends.
Yeah.
So, and all that is really important in this journey, which is a lifelong journey, unfortunately. So going back to my son, I'm extremely proud of him, and part of this book is in honor of him. He went to Yale and played football, and he was all Ivy League. And then he got a master's in public health, and he went to med school, and he is now at Stanford, chief resident in psychiatry. And he hopes to specialize in sports psychiatry.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
So you can't tell them they can't do anything, right?
That's right. And that's my message. I'll never forget, on the day of his diagnosis, he missed a football practice, and football had just started. And the first thing he wanted to know was, can I play football? Yeah. And the first thing his coach said, can he play football? Yeah. And so, at the time I was thinking, gosh, is that all you can think about? Right. I mean, it's football. But that was important for him, because it was important for him to feel normal and still part of a team, and it's still part of his class, and still part of the life that he was building for himself.
Mm-hmm. So good.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us more about your book.
Okay, so my book is going to have actually several parts. Part of it is going to be my personal story, and my story, my journey as a mother, managing and being the primary caretaker for a child with type 1 diabetes. He was diagnosed at 13, which at that time that was 18 years ago. At that time, that was the most common age of diagnosis, 13 years or 14 years. Unfortunately, that time frame has moved down. And so now I think the more common age is like 5 to 7 years, which is, I think is just so unfortunate because, kids are, they lose a part of their childhood that they don't get back. And so it takes really extra parenting skills to manage and parent young children to be healthy, happy, productive adults. And so so as I was saying, my book is in several parts. So part of it is my story and my son's story, but the other part is about parenting according to the developmental age that your child is when he's diagnosed. Mm-hmm. And so most of the literature and most of the books is sort of a one size fits all. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really go into the different parenting strategies that you have to use according to the age of your child and the developmental stage of your child. Yeah. So that's what I'm writing about. And so it's broken up in terms of the development stages that the American Academy of Pediatrics uses. And it talks about the normal developmental milestones, and then how diabetes alters that, and then how you as a parent have to still be a normal parent, but then there are other things that you have to take into consideration when your child has a condition of diabetes.
Yeah. Wow, that'll be so interesting. You said it's coming out soon. Something's due on Friday, right?
The first manuscript.
I'm ready to read it.
Oh, good. Yeah. And I hope, I'm looking forward to you making a contribution to because there's going to be 2 chapters on moms and dads. I think dads get, dads many times get overlooked, and that's really unfortunate because they're very pivotal in this whole journey. And then hopefully there'll be a part on adults or adolescents with diabetes who want to share their story.
Awesome. Well, I am just so excited about all of this because, of course, I have 2 daughters with type 1 diabetes, and they're so little that I felt like, well, it's just going to be their normal life. I don't feel like they're going to miss out on anything on childhood or whatever, because it's just their childhood. Everybody has a different experience. That's what their experience is going to be. And they won't know any different. They won't even remember life before diabetes. So that's kind of how we handle it. And yeah, but it'll be so interesting because you're a pediatrician. So about all the stages and phases, from the doctor's point of view. And so that'll be really, really fun to learn about. Tell me more about your experience, your story, what you've learned.
What have I learned? Okay, so several things. I think in the beginning, and I don't know if my being a physician has a lot to do with it, but because I'm a physician, I really know what this diagnosis means. And it really saddens me, even now, when I think about it, in spite of all the technology. And as I've done research on my book, I have found that that's a very common feeling that many mothers have. And it's important that, as you said, that you take care of yourself, because the incidence of anxiety and depression can be very high. And if you don't take measures to counteract that, you can find yourself in that situation. So an important lesson, and my son reminds me of that all the time, is self-care. He constantly reminds me of that, to the point of being annoying sometimes. I always, when they get to a certain age, the roles reverse, and it's not fun. And it's shocking sometimes. But so that's one lesson. Another lesson I learned, and I learned that very early, and I learned it. I was at a family group meeting, JDRF family group meeting. It's one of my first ones, and I learned that perfection is not the goal, and that was a aha moment, because I really wanted my son to have perfect blood sugars every time,
Yeah.
no matter what. And it wasn't like that.
Yep.
And I found myself just getting really scared, upset, and questioning him, and thinking, he's just not taking this serious enough, and it was causing a lot of tension between us. Besides the normal adolescent tensions that develop at that age. So once I sort of gave that up, I felt better, and our relationship somewhat improved, which leads me to the third lesson. And I've just learned this again as I was doing research for this book. So when kids go through adolescence, there are a lot of hormone changes that happen normally. And those hormone changes cause havoc with glucose management. The sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone spike, cortisol spikes because it's a stressful period for them. And so the cortisol spikes. And so though there are a lot of things that happen physiologically that make the body require more insulin. And in many ways, it makes the body resistant to insulin. So their A1Cs are just off the chart. And that happened with my son. And at the time, it just seemed like he just wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. But I later learned that he was doing what he needed to do, but he needed to change because of his adolescence and because of the hormone surges that he was experiencing as part of adolescence. And so, so that's one of my lessons to parents is to, is to be aware of that and to be patient and, and help them to navigate it. So, one of the things that's required is that their insulin requirements are just all over the place. It goes up and down depending on, depending a lot on their activity. My son was in sports, and as well as just the normal hormone changes. I was fortunate enough to be able to send him to a boarding school, Children's Mary Hall, and he loved it. But that was during the time when his A1Cs were just off the chart, and I was very concerned. And the other thing that happens with that, with glucoses that are out of control, is their academic performance could suffer. So he has always been on a med school path, and he was taking calculus. I'll never forget. He was taking calculus, and his A1C was 14. And he wasn't doing well in the class. And so, we were just trying to get a B, some kind of B, a B minus or something, because he wasn't doing well. And he's usually an A student. And so, I said, okay, I got a medical leave for him during the Thanksgiving holidays. He had one test left to go. And this test was going to be a deciding factor on his grade in the class. And so I asked for a medical leave, and that's another part of my book about advocating for your child. And I brought him home, and I got just intense glucose management, and sort of got him stabilized. And he studied very hard. And he went back and he made the highest score in the class. So, it's just, it's something that you have to just do, exercise your critical thinking skills at all times. And just try to know that they're probably doing their best. And if things aren't working out like you think they should, or that they should, that you should, just reach out for other options. And so in this particular case, he was being managed at the Yale Clinic, which is an excellent clinic, but he was being managed by a nurse practitioner. And so I demanded then, as much as I, like the nurse practitioner, that he see a physician, because, nurse practitioners, they operate within parameters. And so, so he needed a whole lot more insulin than she was going up, and he needed it faster. And as soon as I got him in the care of a physician at Yale, things turned around. And that physician and I are still good friends.
Oh, that's fun. Okay, so many things about what you said that I wanted to bring out. First of all, let's go to that self-care piece, because of course that's my jam, right? I want to help the moms take care of themselves in order to take care of their kids, right? So you have your doctors and your nurses and your care team. And like you said, you got to make sure that you've got the best people on your team to be managing the diabetes. But who's helping you manage yourself, right? And so as the mom, we have those spiked cortisol levels too, right? We have all the emotions, we have all of the feelings. And like you said, if they go unchecked, then it just escalates into anxiety, depression, all the things. And how are we supposed to be managing our children when we're, up in bed, totally depressed, or like so anxious about things we can't even think straight and all of that. And so as a life coach, that's what I want to help the T1D moms with, is their own emotional and mental management as they're helping their child manage their diabetes, because that can never be overstated how important all of that self-care is. So self-care is not, getting a pedicure and taking a bath. Like, I love those things and it's part of my self-care, but the emotional and the mental management, like, that's real self-care, And so that's such a good point. And then your relationship with your son, you mentioned that. I love that, because we just catastrophize so much what this diagnosis means. And we put kind of the diagnosis as like the most important thing, but the relationship suffers when, like you said, you're so worried about that A1C score that it's just the biggest power struggle on steroids. Right.
Right. It is. It really is. Yeah.
So what I've always helped my clients do is to drop power struggle wars. And then I got this diagnosis on top of that. And I'm like, oof, I thought I had, power struggles with toddlers kind of figured out. Now this is like even worse, And so it's just, there's tools and there's techniques that you can learn that can help you with those power struggles, and to be able to keep that relationship intact and not have to have that suffer too much, even though they have diabetes. Like, these are things that, and then the last thing that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on is like the spirituality that you've embraced as part of this. So if you'd be comfortable, I mean, I talk about Jesus and God and all the things on the podcast all the time. So tell me what that's looked like for you.
Okay. So at the time that my son was diagnosed, right around that time, his father and I were going through a divorce, and initially it was a very bitter divorce, our bitter or angry divorce. We were just really very angry with each other, and the only way we could find a way to vent our anger was fighting over the custody of our kids. And so, it got so bad at one point. I mean, we just would not cooperate with each other. If I needed an extra 5 minutes, it was no. If he needed an extra day, absolutely not. And so at one point I just stopped and I said, gosh, God is going to take these kids away from us if we keep acting like this. We're just making them too important. And, and it's not bringing out the best of the Christian in any of us. And I just had the thought that he was going to take them away, one or both of them, because of the way the dad and I were acting. And so when he was diagnosed and he was in the ICU, his dad came up, and this was like the first time we had ever had a cordial conversation. But that diagnosis brought us both to our knees. Wow. And I remember telling him that, I thought that God was punishing us, or punishing me, for the way I had been acting. And he said something that I put in my book that I never forgot. And, it's sort of changed the trajectory and the tone and the tenor of our relationship forever. He said, God is not in the business of punishment. So, that was his way of saying, we're not being punished.
Yeah.
And he also said, he said, look, we're here together, because of someone that we love very much. And that hadn't happened in a very long time. So, so that was sort of the beginning. I've always been a Christian, and I've gone to church regularly, and I raised my sons in the church. But this really put an extra little spin on my on my spirituality. I mean, it really, it really hit home, and it really made me realize how much we're not in control as humans, and how much we have to depend on God to get through. And there have been events that have happened since then that just have deepened my spiritual relationship with God and my spiritual belief. I recently lost my mother, and so yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, for sure. I love that so much. God is not in the business of punishment, right? Like that's our own mortal, like trying to make sense of what's going on here. And it makes sense that it would make sense to you at that time. That's what you were making it mean. But I'm so glad that he told you that, and that you could have that paradigm shift, because if we look at this diagnosis as a punishment, if we look at anything as a punishment, it just, I mean, I talk about this on this podcast all the time. Beating ourselves up better does not work. It just doesn't work.
Right.
And so, like, even like you were saying with the A1Cs, like your relationship with your son was struggling because you were kind of in the blame phase, right?
I was,
like, oh, this is too high because you're not managing it right. And then you get mad at him, and then, and as you find out, like, oh, actually it's just hormones. It's not, he wasn't even doing anything wrong, And so when we blame ourselves, or we blame other people, or we blame God, like, it's just not helpful. It's not true. It's just a lie that Satan puts in our brains that we need to acknowledge as such and get it back out of our brain. Right. So I like to look at it as, I call it God's divine algorithm. That we have the perfect kids that we need for our growth, and they have the perfect kids that they need for their growth. The perfect parents. I don't know what I just said, but what I said meant as
yeah.
And so, I mean, you can see it so clearly now looking back, right? That your relationship with your husband or ex or whatever point you're at that stage, like, that was the healing that you guys needed. And you would never like wish something like this upon somebody, but God has it figured out. Like, he's got the algorithm figured out. And so if we look at it as a punishment, it just feels so harsh. But it's just like with our kids, like, we think we know what's best for them. And so we, like, do the best we can. But like, he perfectly knows how to do that. And he knows what's best for us and what we need for our growth and development. And we just have to trust that. Otherwise, this life doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And, and what brings me comfort and, makes me feel closer is writing this book, and then participating in fundraisers, for the cure. And I'm still hopeful for that. And then just seeing how he has embraced his condition, and he's slowly becoming a world expert on it. And he's done that really since college. I didn't realize, one of my favorite stories is right after his practice. This was during the time when I could go to his doctors with him. Now I can't do that, but I went with him to one of his endocrine appointments with his doctor, and she came out and she was just so excited. She said, "You don't know." She said, "Gosh, you are such a role model." She said there were a whole camp of T1D boys watching them practice, and they picked out that he had diabetes, which was amazing to me because I was watching the practice too. And I never saw anything that would tell me that he had diabetes, but those kids picked it up, which gives me goosebumps because I don't think anybody could be watching closer than me. Every move he made, And I missed the signs that he was checking his glucose, or he was checking his pump, or he was doing something. And those kids picked it up, and they were very inspired. And so I think, he's sort of been on a trajectory of inspiring people ever since.
That's so fun. Oh, I love it so much. All right. Dr. OC, tell people where they can find you. If they're a T1D mom, are you still doing the survey?
Yes, I am. Okay. And so you can go to Dr. OC at SheilaOwensCollins.com, and you'll find the survey.
All right. I'll put that link in the show notes
please
too.
Fill it out.
Yeah. I'll put that link in the show notes too, so that they don't have to remember. They can just click on it. And anything else you want to share as we wrap up?
No, thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, this has been fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
We'll talk to everybody next time. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right then.
Hey, T1D moms. Was that episode helpful? I put together a free video for you with my top 3 brain hacks for T1D moms. Check it out at dropthewar.com/top3. Having a child with diabetes is hard enough. Let's not make it any harder with the way we're thinking about it all. Get my free top 3 brain hacks for T1D moms video at dropthewar.com/top3. See you there. Hello, my sweet T1D parent friend. The next time you catch yourself thinking that you can't do this anymore, redirect your brain to Philippians 4:13 and remind yourself that you can do all things through Christ, which strengthens you. As your life coach, I'm here to be a conduit to help you get your brain and body aligned in order for your spirit to clearly communicate with His Spirit to become your own diabetes parenting expert. Go to dropthewar.com/appointments for your complimentary coaching session, and let's do this thing.